I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we have a lot of news on Russiagate. The story is not going away. We were hoping it might go away with the Mueller testimony, the ridiculous testimony of Robert Mueller. But it's not going away, and I think it's not going away in a good way, because it seems that with each passing day, we're getting more and more information, which is helping us connect a lot of dots and helping us kind of get to the bottom as to what was going on. Sometimes it's raising a little bit more questions than answers. But once again, those questions that are getting raised, I also think are good, because they do shed some light as to some truth that was being told and some lies that was being told. And specifically with Papadopoulos, you'll get into that, and Alexander Downer, the Australian diplomat. But first, let's talk about Halper, Stefan Halper, the other person in the UK outside of Professor Mifsud. You had Stefan Halper, who was another professor, I believe, Cambridge, correct? Was he in Cambridge or
absolutely.
Oxford?
He was in Cambridge.
He was in Cambridge.
Yeah,
okay, he was in Cambridge. He's the guy that got paid a couple of $1 million, I believe, by the government. He's been like a lifelong spy, even though he's never come out as a spy. Not until recently. So Alexander, this guy that has been doing a lot of government mischief for the CIA, he's never come out as a spy, but now it seems that he's admitted it, or at least his lawyers have hinted at the fact that yes, he was in London and he was acting as a spy to derail the Trump candidacy for president and shift over to Plan B to derail the Trump presidency. So, Alexander, what's going on with the other mysterious professor, Stefan Halper?
Well, indeed, and let's stress what a mysterious person he was. Now, this all originates from Stefan Halper's very strange activities over the course of Russiagate. We mainly have discussed Halper in connection with George Papadopoulos, but this has nothing to do with Papadopoulos, but it is Russiagate related. It is an attempt, this was part of the attempt to discredit Michael Flynn, who was the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, who is a United States general, and who was briefly, very briefly, Donald Trump's national security advisor, before he was brought down in what I think was an absolutely disgraceful and concocted scandal right at the start of Donald Trump's presidency, which, however, gave an enormous amount of impetus to Russiagate. Now, what happened was that Flynn came to Cambridge, and Cambridge University then arranged, well, I say Cambridge University, it actually seems it was Stefan Halper himself, arranged a party, or rather a dinner at Cambridge, where Halper was introduced to all sorts of, where Flynn was introduced to all sorts of people. Now, one of the people he was introduced to was Sir Richard Dearlove, who was a former head of MI6. He's a name that recurs continuously, and he was also somebody who was close, apparently, to Christopher Steele, the person who was the famous person who compiled the so-called Steele dossier, about which we've also spoken so much. Another was a man called Professor Christopher Andrew, who is, in a sense, almost, you could say, the MI6's favorite historian. He's a historian based in Cambridge. And then there was this Russian woman whose name was, I think, Lokhova, or
Svetlana Lokhova.
Lokhova, yeah. So she was there. Now she was also a historian. She's Russian. She's also got British citizenship, and she was doing research, academic research in Cambridge on Soviet intelligence activities in the 1930s, all a long time ago. Anyway, after this dinner, Lokhova and Flynn exchanged some emails, very friendly emails, and Flynn said certain things to her which could be, with some difficulty, I think, interpreted as being more than just friendly. But It was apparently only an email contact. And when Russiagate blew up, it was insinuated all over the media, including, I should say, the British media, that Lokhova was actually a Russian spy and that she had somehow established some kind of connection to Flynn, and that Flynn had been in some kind of way seduced by her. Now, what has happened is that Lokhova, who is a feisty and passionate sort of person, by all accounts, has now brought a defamation claim against Stefan Halper in the United States, in Virginia, in which she is alleging that it was Halper who both staged that meeting in order in some way to compromise Flynn, and that it was Halper who spread this story about Lokhova being a Russian spy out to sort of honey trap Flynn. And she is saying that she has no connection to Russian intelligence whatsoever, that she's absolutely not a spy of any kind, and that this allegation that she was a spy is damaging to her reputation and, of course, could compromise her position in Britain, where she is a British citizen. Now, Lokhova, who has brought this case herself, I haven't read her complaint against Halper, but it's quite clear from the response that Halper's lawyers have drafted that she's doing it all herself. This is apparently a massive complaint, making all kinds of allegations against Halper. And Halper's lawyers are applying to the court in Virginia, it's in the United States, to have this case struck out because they say it reveals no cause of action. Now, as I haven't seen her complaint, I can't judge on that. But it's very interesting that Halper makes all kinds of claims, all kinds of reasons why this claim should be struck out. He says it's been brought out of time. He says that she's not been able to prove that he did in fact spread any stories about her being a Russian spy. He says that even if she was a Russian spy, that wouldn't establish a defamation case in the United States because all these things happened in Britain. All on the face of it, you know, legally strong arguments, but he leads with the one that he was actually acting as an informant for United States intelligence, and that supposedly gives him immunity. Now, he doesn't actually admit in this document that he was acting for US intelligence. What he is saying is, if I was acting for US intelligence, I would have immunity, and therefore, since Lokhova says I was acting for US intelligence, she can't bring a claim against me because that would mean that I have immunity. Now, all I will say about that, I mean, I understand the legal thinking here, but given that he seems to have all of these other reasons for saying the claim should be struck out, it does seem to be interesting that he should lead with this one, which he doesn't need to make, that he was acting for US intelligence, you know, that he would have immunity because he was acting for US intelligence. And as you rightly say, it is almost an admission. It's difficult to see it in practical terms as anything else than almost an admission that he was working for US intelligence. In fact, the reality is, we of course know that he was, because the New York Times and other media outlets in the United States have said as much. And we know that he's been paid huge amounts of money by the United States at various times. And of course, the reason he was at that meeting with Flynn and Dearlove and Andrew is because he was known to be, by all of these people, a spy, and presumably the US's spy in Cambridge University. I mean, that seems to me to add up. So I think that we are, with this case, a stage further, actually, to understanding that Halper was a spy and that he was involved with US intelligence in the approaches to Flynn, just as he was in the approaches he made to Papadopoulos.
So just to clarify things, Halper was in the UK under Obama's intelligence apparatus.
Yes.
With the sole purpose of trying to entrap people into this Russia meddling collusion narrative. I mean, that was his purpose. And so he poked around with Papadopoulos, he poked around with Flynn. He was stirring up trouble, or stirring up a pretext in order for the FBI to start getting a full investigation going. Is that correct?
Right. Well, I don't know that it was his sole purpose. I mean, he might have been involved in all kinds of things that we don't know about. But
in this specific instance,
and in
the Papadopoulos instance, say these two
that is clearly what he was doing. I mean, he was homing in on people that were connected to Donald Trump. He homed in on Flynn. He homed in on Papadopoulos. He certainly seems to have been trying in some ways to compromise Papadopoulos. And if you believe Lokhova, which I'm inclined to, he seems to have been trying to compromise Flynn also. And you're absolutely right. He was doing all of this as somebody who worked within the intelligence apparatus of the United States, as an informant at the time when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And despite this sort of attempt in his pleading in the court to try and sort of sugar it away from that, he's claiming immunity for any wrongdoing he did by saying that he was working for the US government.
And the word homed in is correct, because we need to clarify, Alexander, that it was Halper who went after these guys. It wasn't Papadopoulos who searched out Halper, and it wasn't Flynn who searched out Halper. Halper was sending emails and sending invites to these guys with the specific purpose. Sometimes he was even saying, I believe in Papadopoulos' case, he even said, we'll pay you to come out. I mean, he was baiting these people to come to London so he could set these traps for them. Is that not correct?
That is exactly correct. I mean, you're quite right. They were receiving wholly unsolicited contacts.
They weren't searching him out.
They weren't searching him out.
He was searching
them out. And as I said, it seems that he was instrumental in staging this dinner for Flynn. And he was very, very aggressive in pursuing Papadopoulos. And in a previous video, we discussed, based on Papadopoulos' interviews with Mark Stein, how he seems to have introduced Papadopoulos to this woman, Azra Turk, who was this attractive blonde, who seems to have been trying to seduce Papadopoulos in some way. And it would seem, in order to compromise him. Okay,
so, God, Flynn really got the short end of the deal there.
Well, he did.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to, we're not, I mean, we mustn't perhaps overcomplicate this video. But I mean, the whole business of Flynn was outrageous because, of course, Flynn wasn't ultimately compromised by this contact with Lokhova. I mean, nothing. I mean, they had some friendly email chatter in which they discussed historical events. Perhaps Flynn was at some level, attracted to her, but there's no suggestion that he was looking for an affair.
And who cares if he even was?
Who cares if he even was? and she wasn't interested in him. And in any event, she wasn't a spy anyway. So, I mean, the whole thing is just
That's
nonsense.
the main point.
It's absolute nonsense. But the other thing that was done to Flynn, which is, of course, his private conversations on behalf of the president-elect and the incoming administration with the Russian ambassador, the transcripts, the classified transcripts of that were leaked to the media in order to engineer his removal from office, even though it is now universally accepted that over the course of those conversations with the Russian ambassador, he did nothing wrong. He did nothing other than advance the interests of the United States. And leaking of classified information in that way, in order to discredit the national security advisor of the president, is outrageous, and it is also a criminal offense.
Well, my opinion on this, Alexander, is that they targeted Flynn early on, and I think this Halper news confirms this hunch that they targeted Flynn early on, and I think the order was probably given very high up, probably all the way to Obama. Once again, that's my opinion, but I think they saw Flynn. They said, we're going to pick this guy off early.
Yes. Yes.
And that'll be, some very damaging collateral damage to Trump. We're going to pick him off early. And the other person that got, kind of sucked into all of this, who we're going to talk about now, is Papadopoulos. And once he got sucked into this, they picked him off as well. So the other side to this story is Papadopoulos and Alexander Downer. And the fact that, there was probably no discussion of emails or Hillary Clinton emails during that whole, now infamous night at the bar over drinks, where supposedly the FBI kicked off its investigation thanks to Downer and Australia deep state contacting the U.S. deep state, and the whole story that we've documented many, many times. But Alexander, go into this other side of the story.
Yes, because of course Halper plays a key role in this. So we see Halper trying to compromise Flynn, or at least that's how it looks. And we see the simultaneous attempt to compromise Papadopoulos and to use Papadopoulos to create this impression, or so it looks, so it seems, of some kind of contact between, Papadopoulos arranging some kind of contact with Russia in order to make it look as if Trump had some kind of collusion underway with Russia. And so we see Papadopoulos being introduced. Again, he's not chasing this man, Mifsud, this mysterious Maltese Professor Mifsud comes along and introduces himself and says, all these contacts in Russia, and I can arrange a summit meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and can you want to become involved in all of this? And we've discussed in previous programs this very strange set of meetings between Mifsud and Papadopoulos, and Papadopoulos is growing suspicions about all of this. Anyway, the key point is this: the whole official story about how Russiagate began, about how the FBI launched its Russiagate investigation, is that they were tipped off by the Australian government that Papadopoulos had met with the Australian High Commissioner, Alexander Downer, in a bar in London. And over the course of that encounter, Papadopoulos, who supposedly got drunk, blurted out that he'd had these contacts with Mifsud, who was a known Russian agent, and that somehow Mifsud had told Papadopoulos that the Russians had emails of Clinton's that they were going to disclose. And this was supposedly what got Russiagate going. I would add, and this isn't something that I think people have remember very well, but there was even a story at one point, and this was from Glenn Simpson's testimony to the Senate. Now, I know this is all very complicated, but Glenn Simpson, let us remind ourselves, as at Fusion GPS, and he was Christopher Steele's boss. Christopher Steele being the person who compiled this dossier, which supposedly charted out all the collusion between the Russians and Donald Trump, which dossier has now been discredited. Anyway, Glenn Simpson, in his discussions with the Senate, said that Steele had been told by the FBI that they had this corroboration that there was collusion going on between the Russians and the Donald Trump campaign, because another informant had come forward, and that informant was Alexander Downer, who had provided all this information about what was going on between Papadopoulos and Mifsud. So this is the official story. But now that official story is disintegrating because Papadopoulos has said that he never mentioned to Alexander, he has no recollection of ever telling Alexander Downer, the Australian High Commissioner, that Mifsud had ever told him anything about dirt, the Russians having dirt about Clinton or about having emails of Clinton's. And it seems that recordings confirm this, and that Downer was never, in fact, told any of this. And it's now appears that the first time Papadopoulos ever mentioned to anybody, whether it be the Trump campaign or Downer or the media or whomever, the first time he ever mentioned or confirmed that Mifsud had said something to him about the Russians having dirt on Hillary Clinton or on the Russians having emails of Clinton was in a meeting he had in February 2017 with the FBI. So he never said this to Downer. Now, that begs the question. The big question for me is, what in that case was Downer reporting to the Australian intelligence, which the Australians were so worried about that they passed on to the FBI, and which got Russiagate started? Because, I mean, all right, he might have mentioned, Papadopoulos might have mentioned that he'd met this man Mifsud, but what does that mean? What is so strange or bizarre about that? It seems, from Papadopoulos' account, he doesn't even recall mentioning Mifsud to Downer. So what was it about this mysterious meeting at this bar that was so concerning that it got the whole of Russiagate investigation going? It looks as if actually nothing. And it looks again as if this meeting at this bar in Chelsea, in fact, I believe, in Chelsea, is just a cover story that was concocted in order to conceal the fact that the real origin of this Russiagate conspiracy was, in fact, the Steele dossier and the things that Christopher Steele was doing. And if we go back even further, the kind of things that Stefan Halper was doing in Cambridge with his contacts with Flynn, and that, in fact, this whole thing began with a set of provocations.
Yeah, it was a cover story because if this is confirmed that Papadopoulos didn't say anything to Downer about what Mifsud told him, then, yeah, you're right. What the hell did Downer tell the Australian government? And what the hell did the Australian government tell the U.S. government, the FBI? Nothing.
And it's nothing.
I mean nothing.
There's nothing.
Because
there's nothing
Downer would not have known who Mifsud was. He would not have known anything about emails at the time. He would have known nothing about that. So what did he tell the Australian government? That the Australian government had to, notify the U.S. Intelligence agencies.
Yes.
That's so pressing. It's so urgent.
Exactly. I mean, it seems bizarre. I mean, the whole thing, the whole story is unraveling And I mean, if you go to Wikipedia, if you go to all sorts of places, you go to the New York Times, they all insist it wasn't the Steele dossier. Oh, no, not the Steele dossier, the unverified, salacious dossier that started Russiagate. It was Papadopoulos meeting Mifsud that started Russiagate, about which they were told, the US intelligence was told by Downer. Well, what did Downer say? As I said, I can't see this. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any kind of sense. And then what we know, and this is where Halper comes in, is that this meeting with Downer, it seems, didn't lead to anything. So what then happens is that who comes along but Stefan Halper? And he starts pressing himself on Papadopoulos and introducing Papadopoulos, to these attractive blondes who they meet in the Connaught Hotel in London. And I can't help but think that it's looking increasingly to me as if what happened was that, you remember that Papadopoulos spoke about the dangle, the bait being the comment about dirt and emails of Clinton that he was offered by Mifsud, this mysterious Maltese professor who Papadopoulos first met in an acknowledged Western, almost spy school in Rome, and who's got all these connections with the British establishment. Anyway, it seems that when Papadopoulos didn't say anything about this dirt and these emails, either to the Trump campaign or to Downer, Stefan Halper is brought in to try to sort it out and to retrieve something from this operation. Only he doesn't succeed.
Yeah, he's like the fixer, the cleanup
he's
guy.
Like
they brought him in to try to,
exactly
put together the cover story because the dossier wasn't going to work.
Exactly. I mean, and by the way, I mean, it wouldn't be a complete, as I said, spy story, spy thriller stuff if we didn't have attractive girls thrown in. So we have Mifsud trying to introducing Papadopoulos to this Russian girl who he says is Putin's niece, and who's now apparently been identified as a young woman called Polonskaya, who's from St. Petersburg, and who's not Putin's niece, surprised to say, but is very attractive. And then we have Halper introducing Papadopoulos to this other attractive blonde, Azra Turk, who's supposed to be Turkish, but we don't really know very much about her either, and she's vanished off the face of the earth. And it looks as if, as I said, when Downer doesn't work, and when Mifsud doesn't work, and when Halper doesn't work, they try honey traps also. But none of that worked either, because, as we said on our previous videos, Papadopoulos kept his head.
He kept his mouth shut.
He kept his mouth shut. He didn't fall for any of this.
Kept his mouth shut.
He kept his mouth shut.
That's the most important part.
Exactly. He didn't leak. He didn't send enthusiastic emails to the Trump campaign saying, "Wow, I've been told about these emails of Clinton that Mifsud is saying." He didn't come along to this bar and blurt out to Downer, and so that Downer could record him. Well, I've heard from the Russians, from Mifsud, about all these emails, and he didn't say the same to Halper, and he didn't say the same to these two attractive women he was presented with. So I mean, he kept his mouth shut, and he kept his head. But as I said, we are starting to get a feel for what was going on in Britain, and I mean, it's interesting, and I think Halper is obviously an important person. Mifsud is an important person. Sir Richard Dearlove, who's the former head of MI6, as I said, is increasingly looking like he was an important person, because we know that he had a meeting with Christopher Steele at the Garrick Club in London, where they discussed the Steele dossier, and that they had quite strong connections with each other. So we can see that all kinds of things were happening in Britain, and in the meantime, the bomb is the ticking bomb is Michael Horowitz's report, which apparently Lindsey Graham has had a peek into its early drafts. Remember, he's the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, so it's fully appropriate that he should, and which he says is going to be an absolute, shock horror stuff. I mean, it's going to pull no punches.
Boy, the UK deep state was up to a lot of no good. The Australian deep state was up to a lot of no good. And Alexander Downer, it looks like Alexander Downer has been caught in a lie. We'll see. I mean, do you think we're going to ever, get the full view as to what was said and what was not said between Mifsud, Papadopoulos, Downer, Australian intelligence? I mean, are we ever going to get a clear understanding as to this chain of conversations or conversations that were never had?
Yes, I think there's a good chance we will, and I say why, because it seems they're transcripts of them. I mean, Papadopoulos himself said to Mark Stein that he thinks he was the subject of a FISA warrant. He might have been, but because he was based in Britain, there wouldn't necessarily have been any need for a FISA warrant, because the British intelligence could have monitored him as a US citizen in Britain. And it may be that something like that was happening. But it seems that Downer, at least, was recording his conversations with Papadopoulos. And I have to say, it's increasingly looking to me as if this famous meeting between Mifsud and Papadopoulos at this hotel near Liverpool Street Station, where Mifsud is supposed to have did say to Papadopoulos, about all this dirt and all these emails of Clinton. That was probably recorded also. I mean, that's how it looks to me. So we should be able to reconstruct this. I ought to say something about that, by the way, because Andrew McCarthy, who is, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant and incisive commentators on Russiagate, has questioned whether, in fact, Mifsud ever did say anything about dirt and emails of Clinton to Papadopoulos at this famous meeting. I have no doubt that he did. I think it would be very, very extraordinary if we discovered that he had not. And I think if you look at the whole sequence of events that followed, they only make sense to me if he did say something like that, because why else would people like Alexander Downer and Stefan Halper be taking such an interest in Papadopoulos? And I have to say, having now heard Papadopoulos in the interviews he gave to Mark Stein, I believe him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mifsud told Papadopoulos about the emails because it was Mifsud telling Papadopoulos that gets the whole ball rolling to bring in all these other spies and all these other assets, like Halper, like Downer, and all these guys, and putting them in position as Turk. So you put everyone in position, to get this whole Russia meddling narrative moving, and to get the FBI involved and all of that. So I mean, you needed a Mifsud there to kind of set the whole thing in motion.
Exactly, that's exactly my view. So we've got lots going on with Russiagate. We've got Michael Horowitz, who's looking into all of the FISA abuse. That's sort of starting to come together, and we are getting more information bit by bit about Halper, and this court case I think will help to some extent with that, even if it doesn't go very far. The court case that this woman Lokhova has brought, and we're getting a lot more information starting to come together about Mifsud and Papadopoulos. So we'll see where all this comes together and how this all adds up, because I think there is a trail. I don't think it's cold. I think we can follow it through and get to the bottom of this. All it depends on is will. Does it really? Are people really interested in finding out the truth? If they are, then the Justice Department has the tools to find out the truth in this case. So I'm reasonably confident that we will get to the truth. Perhaps not all of the truth, but enough of it to know basically what was going on.
Oh, yeah, we have to get to the truth. I think we all and everyone who's watching this, I think we all have a general understanding as to what was going on.
Yes.
Good for Lokhova. I think she should go after Halper, full force. Go after this guy. He deserves it. He deserves to be outed big time. Yeah. And God, Alexander, it must have driven the U.S. deep state, the Australian, the U.K. deep state, all these guys crazy. The fact that Papadopoulos, number one, kept his mouth shut, and number two, didn't fall for any of the honey traps. I mean, they must have been just pulling their hair going, geez, what do we have to do to really trap this guy?
Well, indeed, sir. I'm going to just say, I think that's absolutely right. I think that Papadopoulos must have been a deeply frustrating person for all of these people. But can I just say something? I mean, that's where this kind of chess game that intelligence agencies sometimes play with people doesn't always work, because people are not chess pieces. Papadopoulos, as we said, turned out to be a much more intelligent and mature person than they counted on. And as for Lokhova, well, all I will say about her is she's very feisty and very fiery. And I've known two Russian women who have brought defamation cases in England, and they both won. Perhaps Lokhova will be the third one who brought a defamation case and won. I don't think so, actually. But, whatever, she's pushed this story forward and given it a further prominence, and we'll get more. She's extracted certain things from Halper, which I don't think he would have wanted to say.
The big one was that he said that he admitted that he is a spy. I mean,
well,
indirectly, but
indirectly, yes. Yes, as I said, why else otherwise would he have said that, given that he's got all of these other legal arguments to rely upon? It seems to me most difficult to believe.
And it shows that he's scared.
Oh yes.
It shows that he feels the heat is coming towards him. He feels it for him to use that as an argument.
Indeed, so absolutely, it does. That's exactly right. By the way, just for people to know, she's suing him for $25 million, which is she's certainly not going to get anywhere. Even if she won the case, she wouldn't get anything remotely like that. But I mean, it shows what a gutsy person we're dealing with.
Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And don't forget, you can get a copy of this video in audio format. Visit us on iTunes and on SoundCloud. Follow us there. And you can also help this channel out a whole lot if you donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Your donation really helps keep this channel up and running. And of course, you can purchase ebooks too on Russiagate for a special price with a foreword written by Alexander. And to unravel all the complexities of Russiagate, I strongly suggest, purchasing a magic mug, drinking from that magic mug, and Russiagate will make complete and total sense.
Absolutely. So read our two ebooks, which, by the way, I think it's fair to say, I mean, they are, I think, not just the best books on Russiagate, I'm going to say that, but I think that they show how completely right we got Russiagate. I mean, we were never fooled. We saw the whole absurdity of this story right from the outset. And if you read our ebooks, especially if you're drinking from our magic mugs while you're doing so, all the pieces will fall into place. And if you come to these videos and you find this all very complicated when we describe it, it won't seem complicated to you any longer. It will all look simple and clear, because ultimately Russiagate was simple and clear. It was a plot to make Hillary Clinton president and to stop Donald Trump being elected and to delegitimize him when he was. So it's all very clearly explained there. And as I said, how could we write books like that? How could we work on the Duran and do videos of this sort, unraveling all these complicated threads? Well, we do it because we drink from mugs like this, which keep us refreshed and keep us going through the long hours of the day and night when we have to sort of I read reams. Both Alex and I read prodigious amounts in order to keep on top of these sort of stories and to be able to provide you with the analysis that we do. And of course, we're able to do it because these mugs are so beautiful, so elegant, so marvelous to hold in one's hand. And they're also made from perfect, excellent porcelain, wonderful porcelain body. They're wonderful to hold. They're 15 ounces. And this one has Mr. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, my particular hero, because I have always been interested in diplomacy. Both of us are. Alex comes from a diplomatic family. I think we can both agree he is the supreme diplomat of the present age. But, you know, it's not the only mug. Here's a mug with the Alpha Force. So there's the brains, and they're the fist, if you like, Russia's fist. And there's Russia's double-headed eagle crest. And of course, we have our own double-headed eagle, which is the Duran double-headed eagle, which is here on this marvelous 100% incredibly stylish cotton, 100% cotton polo shirt. But we also have great T-shirts, we have stickers, we have hoodies, we have hats, we have things for the man for all seasons. It's all there in our shop. They're wonderful merchandise. People who've been buying it have been raving about it. We've had enormously positive feedback. As I was saying to Alex, I went to Kenwood House, which is a stately home nearby, with my dogs and looking amazing in this particular polo shirt I'm wearing now. So you look fantastic in this polo shirt. So go to our shop, help the Duran, help yourself, buy our books, buy our amazing merchandise, help yourself to mugs like this, and help us. And Alex will tell you how.
Just go to the duranshop.com. The link is in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.